Revelation 2744. From the 17th of May 1943. Unexplored forces of nature. Elemental workings of this. People can indeed make use of the forces of nature. They can exploit them and make them serve their plans. They can make things come into being again with the help of these forces of nature, but they are not able to fathom them completely. It remains hidden to them in what connection these forces stand with each other and what they actually are at the bottom of the matter. And they will never be able to gain insight into this, because this knowledge means penetrating into spiritual territory, which cannot be entered purely by research. For the original cause of every natural force is to be sought in the spiritual and therefore cannot be explained as long as neither the spiritual path is taken nor the belief in spiritual activity exists in the first place. Truthful enlightenment inevitably touches the spiritual sphere, the sphere which people mostly do not want to accept. And therefore they will only be able to fathom the forces of nature as far as they can be explained and justified earthly. People can therefore scientifically only arrive at such results as can be proven, that is, they can certainly determine the effect through their experiences, but never the cause. To a certain extent they only come closer to what expresses itself earthly, and they can observe this down to the details and thus now also prove it research-wise and now build on it and make use of these powers accordingly. But where they come from, what they actually are and what purpose they have, is still an unsolved riddle to people and will remain so as long as the spiritual path is not taken. And therefore they will also not be able to investigate the elements of nature if they let off extraordinary steam, for since they don't know their origin, the time and nature of their eruption is unknown to them. They conclude that the influence of the sun is the reason for the inexplicable forces of nature. Their knowledge is piecemeal and shows great gaps especially in this area. Although they are far advanced in research insofar as they can calculate and numerically determine the effect of the forces of nature, they will never be able to fathom the cause and will therefore always be surprised and unable to state in advance whether and when these forces will become effective. But they will also not be able to switch off the elements of nature. They will neither be able to inhibit them nor to determine their time, for the forces have an elementary effect, undetermined in strength and vehemence, just as the time and nature cannot be determined either, since the forces of nature break through. In contrast, people who are of awakened spirit can foresee both time and place without any scientific research, but only if a time and place is advantageous for people's development, which, however, is mostly not the case, which is why God also withholds knowledge about this from people until the hour has come when He makes Himself known through the forces of nature. For the knowledge of time and place would only result in unimaginable chaos amongst people, in fear and panic, which would hardly contribute towards promoting the higher development of the souls. Only God approximately gives knowledge to people in order to point out to them the elementary raging of the forces and to move them to the right attitude towards Him. But the people through whom God conveys the knowledge to earth are already spiritually mature enough to know the origin of all forces in the spiritual kingdom, and therefore they can accept the announcements with the right faith and also spread them with the right faith, which, however, is not recognized by the intellectual researcher because the origin is unknown to him as a researcher and he does not accept spiritual explanations. And yet, the proclamations of the foresighted will correspond to the truth, which will be proven by the occurrence of what was received spiritually, whereas the rational researchers will be surprised because they had no grounds whatsoever to conclude an outbreak of the forces of nature. For this remains hidden from them because divine will only gives enlightenment to those who seek spiritual contact with the beings which can give enlightenment about everything, and because the knowledge of what is otherwise hidden from people can only be gained in the spiritual kingdom. Amen.